Hi, so welcome, friend. I have here Robert, who is going to explain to us what he experienced with his first session of Emotion Code. Hi, Robert.
Hi.
So,
How are
yeah, tell me about like what you experienced and what you told me after seeing your results.
Well, when I saw the results, I immediately was like, I guess in a lot of ways just blown away because I felt like that everything that was there was like extremely accurate. Some of it was like um kind of like things that I didn't really know at one point in my life. And God took me on a journey of revealing all these things. And here in 30 minutes, you went and told me everything that God would take me on this long journey. I was like, should have went to you first, but the reality of it was amazing how accurate it was, just the specifics. So I don't have the list in front of me. I think you said you have the list. If you wanted to like read some, I would explain some as, you can kind of go from point to point and I'll explain what I experienced in that. So,
Yeah, so in
if,
Emotion Code, we do a muscle test and we also look for the timeline where the original emotion occurred. And so I'll maybe start from the earliest to the latest, right? So we had the preconception anxiety, and you told me something about your mom, and the
yeah,
prenatal in the second trimester with regards to nervousness.
yeah. What, I knew some of this, but it was like, as it became revealed to me, that I always dealt with some kind of anxiousness, some kind of unknown trauma that I kept looking in life like saying, okay, where did this come from? Where did this come from? And it was like, well, I had no memory of where it came from. But I could tell that I was fighting something was like an invisible battle and I didn't know what it was. And it felt like anxiety. It felt like um, an anxiousness, a stress. And it felt like, put it in my words, where it felt like I was living in a vacuum, like whatever was there was sucking the life out of me. And I was like, why am I feeling this? So God had taken me to a journey of where he showed me inside the womb when I was there that the experiences of what my mother was experiencing were being transferred to me
Yeah.
being in the room. And her experiences, not to get too much in detail, but basically my dad had an affair. And
Yeah.
while my mother was pregnant with me, so, her whole world fell apart. The person that she loved, she felt betrayed. She felt, rejected. She had questions of like, am I good enough? And all these things were being passed on to me,
Yes.
feelings. Um, she also had fears of anxiety about like, if this is the man that was working and providing for her at that time, and then all of a sudden he's, you know, betrayed her.
Hmm.
Is he going to abandon me? So she was feeling feelings of abandonment, feelings of, like betrayal. And, of course, I felt all those anxieties and all those feelings and all those, stresses in life. And then the next thing was that, it was like her feeling toward me, I believe, was probably like she wasn't all that fond of me at that moment. Like I didn't do anything wrong, but it was the reality that, I would assume as a wife, if she's pregnant and she felt loved by her husband, then she's going to feel a warm feeling toward this baby that's in her.
Yeah.
And you could feel complete opposite feelings when she's feel like she's being betrayed, she's been used, all that kind of that feeling. So, all that was like betrayed upon me. And I realized that all those emotions were in me, and God had been showing me that there have been emotions trapped in me for a long time, and I believe some of them were being released. But it was amazing that you call that in the emotional code. So that explains a lot that I was experiencing.
Yeah,
So
and I have no idea or background about your mom too, so that
yeah,
was definitely something, when you told me that. The next one was age 21, and it was absorbed anxiety. I know you said something about that age.
yeah. I believe it like age 21, it was just that shifting of like growing up to be a man, to be to take on to try to leave the response, to take on responsibility, but also kind of leave childhood and go into manhood. But I did it all alone. I did
Mhm.
it totally alone. My dad was not there.
Yeah,
He had my mom and him had divorced when I was a year and a half, and he really wasn't there. So I had no real activity with him. My mom uh, was trying to be there, but she still was emotionally kind of disconnected from, a lot of pain, trauma, and stuff she
hmm,
experienced in life. And
yeah,
I don't know if she fully had recovered and all that, but at the same time, because I felt such a disconnect from her when I was a baby, I literally grew up not fully connecting to my mother.
yeah,
So again, I was living and processing everything in life alone. You
yeah,
know, like there was not this feeling of like family's going to help you. I did not have that feeling. It was feeling like I was facing life all alone.
yeah,
And that process also creates in you a form of isolation, a form of aloneness that you sort of just like you literally that's the only way you know how to process stuff. So when people try to in relationships or anything try to connect close to you, you have no clue how to do this because
yeah,
you processed everything alone. So I believe a lot of that happened when I was 21. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And the last couple ones, there were three that we got from age 51, and just
Yeah.
the conflict, the guilt, and absorbed sorrow.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think I think at age 51 was in a process when I realized fully like my marriage was over.
Mm,
Okay. Like my marriage was over and realizing that it was sort of like time to move on, and the process of some of the things I felt like one was you felt a void because all of a sudden you were a part of something. You felt like that you had, had a family, you had connection with someone, and then all of a sudden that's sort of like stripped away.
mm,
But then at the age of 51, I felt a lot of just, you know, responsibility because of it, and it was like, not that I like went out and just did something horribly wrong, but I just realized my dysfunction of my life. I was awakening to how much dysfunction I had, how much brokenness I had. And, in a lot of ways, I just absorbed a lot of guilt. I
mm,
almost blame myself more than really understanding that it was more than that,
yeah.
and it's been since that point, which has only been 2 years, has been a lot of reality. God is showing me that it wasn't just me, and I'm not trying to point fingers at her or anything like that, but
Yeah.
it was like I lived a life where, I just kind of took on all the responsibility and all the, and I'll say all the responsibility. I took all the blame and the guilt.
Yeah.
Okay. Saying the responsibility because she took on a lot of responsibility. I can't say that she didn't, she did, but I just, for some reason, carried the weight of the brokenness upon me
Mm,
for a long, long time. And I didn't know how to let that go. You know,
yeah.
it
Yeah.
really was just a lot of, kind of like, wow, relive the timeline. And I had to think about it, and I was like, exactly what happened with 51. And it was like, wow, it was kind of like, then you realized, hey, that really was the time when a lot. I had some things that were going on in my life at that moment that were kind of the revealing of, it wasn't all my responsibility, but some of those things, I can't share those details because they would be accusatory, but they revealed to me that, in a lot of ways, it revealed to me that God had my back,
Mm-hmm.
that God had my back. And he was saying, like in a lot of ways, he kind of showed me in the marriage, he said, enough's enough,
Yeah.
enough's enough. You've gone through enough in this, and maybe the same for her too, that enough was enough, but the reality of that was, I found that, I be honest with you, I think I was my worst enemy.
Mm-hmm.
I was my worst enemy, and God had to really reveal that to me,
Yeah.
that the broken areas, and this is something I believe, that I realized that I was more, instead of feeling like what I was taught before was, we're always taught like we have this big disconnect from God, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and the reality was that God showed me I had more of a disconnect with myself
Mm-hmm.
than I had with God, and that I really was kind of like my worst enemy, that I needed to learn to forgive and love and balance the scales even with myself,
Yeah.
if that makes.
So tell me, how are you feeling now after the emotion code session?
It was, I feel good, but I also feel like things have shifted and changed. That's
Mm-hmm.
the thing that I think that we have to process in this, is that we think, "Oh, I'm just going to have a lot of goosebumps and everything feels wonderful." Well, there is some of that, but there was also like, I felt as if God was saying, okay, now that I've removed some of these emotions, you can't live the same way. You can't operate the same way. You need to change patterns
Mm-hmm.
inside. And that can kind of take your breath away for a moment, because you're like, wait a second, and you're really, if you're not ready for that, it could almost be a little bit tough to swallow, because we like our patterns, we like our, things, but when we heal emotionally, some actions will be required for us to change it as well. Is
Yes.
that
Yeah, sometimes we're stuck in a pattern because of the emotions, right? The energy that's keeping it in place. And then once we remove any negative emotions, that's when we are able to kind of see more about what was keeping us stuck in the first place. That's really good, Robert. So anything else that you want to share lastly for whoever might be listening?
okay? What I was going to say was that when we have these emotions, and the importance of releasing these emotions, is that when we co-create with God, it's not all about uh, just a thinking or a mental assent. It really
Mm,
deals with what we feel in our emotions. You
yeah.
know, it's subconscious, but it's also emotional based type stuff. So, I could say all day long, "Hey, I'm blessed, and God's going to be, doing something wonderful in my life." But if I don't feel those feelings, and there's nothing wrong if you have negative feelings, you're not condemned, but the reality that you need a healing, you need a process, you need something to help you release those emotions, because no matter what I'm saying or what I'm trying to project, if the emotions are still based upon the trauma and the feelings I have, that's really what I'm co-creating. I'm
Mhm.
creating and all the trauma and everything. So as I release these emotions, heal, even change some of the patterns and the things that I have in me, the emotions start to align, the emotions start to come into order. It's almost like almost for a moment there, you feel void, like you have no emotions because you've been living on the negative emotions for so long, and
Yeah.
all of a sudden they're gone. You're like, okay, now I need to really allow God to create these emotions in me, create the proper, emotional atmosphere inside of me.
Yeah.
And when it starts to happen, then and only then I am co-creating with God
Yeah.
with the proper flow and testifying and speaking what, like, it's really like a seed inside of me, like fully impregnating me and causing me to awaken to his heart toward me. And you kind of wake up and you say, hey, I really think God likes me, or I really think God's crazy about me, or he loves me. And but you start feeling it in specific situations. We may know that in sort of a general way, but then all of a sudden you go, in this traumatic situation where I have felt for years like like I felt like I was displeasing to God and he didn't like me or whatever.
Yeah.
And now for the first time I feel like he's for me in this situation, that he really loves me. He cares about me, and I just think that the healing of the emotions is a huge, huge thing. And so yeah, I believe it's a gateway
Yeah.
into God's promises, and it's a gateway into the glory of God. I've also felt like, and maybe people are talking about this, but I just felt this the other day. I felt like God said, do you know when he, in the Bible, when he talked about, I think it was Joshua going into the promised land, and he was, I think it was Joshua. I'm making sure I'm getting my characters right, but but it's like he was talking about going into the promised land.
Yeah.
And so they spy out the promised land. And when they went to spy out the promised land, they saw giants.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And God spoke to me and he said, the promised land is inside of you, Robert.
Yeah.
And when you go, you're not really wanting to go within and deal with what the emotions in you, because some of the emotions that are inside of you are the giants.
Yeah.
The
Wow.
giant, the giants of failure, the giants of this or whatever, we scope it out and we go, oh, I don't want to go there. I don't want to deal with that. I'll stay out here where it's safe. And it's like he's requiring us to go within to this promised land
Mm-hmm.
and face these giants
Mm-hmm.
and allow these giants to be revealed that they're really not giants. They're
Yeah.
just our emotions. They really are
Yeah.
the trauma that we have, and that we find that, with his partnership, that we can, overcome these things. And when we do, we're actually like taking the promised land. We're,
Mm-hmm.
we're regaining that place in the promised land. We do that with the emotions being healed. And when we do, eventually you'll start feeling like, this isn't just the promised land. This is my promised land. This is my, where God is doing something for me, and
Mm-hmm.
so that's kind of been my experience with this and with some of the other emotional healings and stuff that I'm doing.
Yeah.
So, but you did an incredible job, Connie, and it was really, really good.
Yeah, thank you so much, Robert. And I just want to invite everyone. So if you want to try Emotion Code, I'll drop the link down below in the description. And again, Robert, thank you so much for just hopping on and spreading your testimony.